At my birthday party, I gave my fiancée a gift. She opened it in front of her friends and said, "This is why I can't wait to upgrade." They all snickered. I just smiled, blew out my candle, and left the cake on the table. A week later, she showed up to a different apartment. "All right, Reddit, I've been a long-time lurker, but the last month of my life has been such a spectacular train wreck that I feel like I owe it to the internet to share the story. The best part? I was the one conducting the train. It all came to a head on my 35th birthday. Now, when I say my birthday, I use the term loosely. It was technically a celebration of the day I was born, but the party itself had very little to do with me. I had pitched the idea of a quiet steak dinner. My fiancée, Sarah, countered with a 50-person cocktail party at our apartment. Our apartment, of course, being the one I paid for. Her friends, of course, being the 50 people. I lost that negotiation, as I often did. The week before the party, she sat me down with the kind of serious look a CEO gives before announcing layoffs. "Babe, we need to talk about your birthday gift," she said. I was confused. "You got me a gift?" I hadn't seen any evidence of this. She laughed, a pretty but completely empty sound. "No, silly, the gift you're getting me." I just stared at her, waiting for the punchline. There wasn't one. "You want me to buy you a gift? For my birthday?" "Exactly," she said, relieved that I was catching on. "It's not really for me, it's for us, it's for our brand. Tiffany is going to be there, and you know she'll be live streaming the whole thing. I just want to have something shiny to open, you know, to show everyone how amazing you are." I'm not a simp. Let's just get that out of the way. I'm a crisis manager. I work for a large international NGO. When there's an earthquake, a flood, or a political collapse, I'm the guy they send in to make sense of the chaos. I assess unstable situations, I manage logistics in impossible environments, and I make hard, logical decisions when everyone else is panicking. My entire life is about identifying and neutralizing threats to a mission. For the past year, my personal life has been my mission's shore leave. After a particularly brutal stint managing aid distribution in a conflict zone, I came home completely burned out. I met Sarah a few weeks later. She was beautiful, fun, and her biggest problem in life was which brunch spot had the best lighting for Instagram. It was perfect. Our relationship wasn't a passion project. It was a decompression chamber. I knew what she was. She and her friends, led by the perpetually unimpressed Tiffany, were a case study in terminal vapidity. I wasn't investing in a future with her. I was observing a foreign culture while my soul rebooted. I was paying for a front row seat to a very strange, very shallow documentary. So when she asked me to buy her a gift for my birthday, I didn't even argue. I just logged it as another data point. "Okay," I said, "I'll take care of it." The night of the party was exactly as awful as I'd imagined. The apartment was filled with people named Chad and Ashley and Tiffany, all talking loudly about things that didn't matter. I played the part of the gracious host, smiling and nodding while my brain was mentally calculating the supply chain logistics for a hypothetical refugee camp. I hadn't received a single thing from Sarah. No card, no happy birthday, nothing. I was just the guy funding the open bar. Then came the main event. Tiffany, who has the predatory instincts of a cheetah and the intellectual depth of a puddle, got everyone's attention. "Okay, people, time for the moment we've all been waiting for. Sarah's gift." Sarah beamed, shooting me a look that said, "This better be good." I handed her the box. It wasn't the Cartier bracelet she had been leaving open on her browser tabs. Inside was a vintage, first edition copy of The Wind in the Willows. It was the only thing I had from my late mother. It was the most valuable object I owned, not in money, but in meaning. I'd had it professionally restored. Inside I'd written, "For all the adventures we have yet to begin." It was a test, a final one. I wanted to see if there was anything under the surface. She opened it. Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second as she stared at the old book. But she was a professional. She held it up for Tiffany's phone. "Oh my God, babe," she said, her voice straining to sound sincere. "A book? It's so thoughtful." Tiffany zoomed in, a confused look on her face. Then Sarah, high on champagne and the attention of 50 of her closest sycophants, made a fatal error. She looked at her friends, let out a little laugh, and said the words that sealed her fate. "It's sweet, but this is exactly why I can't wait to upgrade." Her friends exploded in laughter. It was the punchline to a joke I hadn't realized I was the butt of for the past year. In that moment, the mission brief in my head changed. The decompression was over. The environment had turned hostile. The objective was no longer observation, it was extraction. I just smiled. I walked over to the sad, untouched birthday cake, picked up a single cupcake, and lit the candle. I held it up. "Make a wish," I said to no one in particular. Then I blew it out, set the cupcake down, and walked straight into my home office, closing the door behind me. The crisis had officially begun, and I was now fully activated. Update 1. The first rule of crisis management is to secure your assets and establish a safe operating base. While the party was dying down, I was in my office, executing a full-scale operational withdrawal. Sarah, I assume, thought I was just pouting. She had no idea I was orchestrating a coup against her entire way of life. My primary asset was the apartment. The lease was in my name, a non-negotiable term from the start. A crisis manager never co-signs anything in an unstable region. At 2 a.m., I emailed the landlord. I gave my 30-day notice, CCing my lawyer. I informed him I was vacating immediately, but that the final month's rent was covered. I also stated that the other occupant, Sarah, would be responsible for the final walkthrough and key handover. This simple email transferred the full liability of the apartment and the headache of dealing with her directly to the landlord. Next, I secured my supply lines. I logged into my bank and credit card accounts. Sarah was an authorized user on everything. It took me less than 5 minutes to revoke her access to a small fortune in available credit. I rerouted all my income to a new, secure account. The logistical support for the Sarah project was now officially cut off. I have an emergency bag packed at all times. It's a habit from my line of work. It contains cash, a satellite phone, copies of my documents, and a change of clothes. I grabbed it, along with my work laptop and the book she had discarded on the counter. By 4 a.m., I had extracted myself from the hot zone. I didn't go to a hotel. I went to a small, unassuming apartment I'd leased under my company's name 6 months ago. A good manager always has a fallback position. From this new command center, I moved on to the next phase, dismantling the opposition's infrastructure. Sarah's power base wasn't her own, it was her network, and the queen of that network was Tiffany. Tiffany was a problem. She was an influencer, which is another word for a professional parasite. Her entire existence was a carefully curated lie, funded by a combination of her wealthy parents and a series of scams she ran on small businesses. I knew this because for the past year, I had been treating her as a potential hostile actor. I had done my homework. My job has taught me how to find the cracks in any system. Tiffany's biggest vulnerability was a charity she was promoting. She was raising money for a fake animal shelter, complete with a slick website and heart-wrenching stock photos of sad-looking puppies. It was a classic grift. I spent the next morning putting together a dossier. It was a professional intelligence brief. It contained a full analysis of her fake charity, screenshots of her soliciting donations, and a financial trace I ran that showed the donation link went directly to her personal PayPal account. I also included evidence of her buying tens of thousands of fake followers and the return fraud scheme she was running with Sarah using my credit cards. I didn't post it online. A public attack is messy. A targeted strike is efficient. I sent the dossier from an anonymous encrypted email address to 3 specific targets: an investigative reporter at a local news station who specialized in online scams, the IRS's charity fraud division, and Tiffany's father. With the primary hostile neutralized, I turned to her secondary support units. Her other friends. One of them, a girl named Madison, worked in a junior role at a large investment bank. A job like that requires a rigorous background check and a high level of personal integrity. I did a quick search of her public social media. It was a treasure trove of photos of her at parties, clearly intoxicated and bragging about her wild weekends. I compiled a small, neat package of these public posts and sent it anonymously to her firm's head of compliance, with a simple note: "Is this the public image your company wishes to project?" The final piece was Sarah's upgrade plan, a man named Richard. He was a wealthy, recently divorced businessman she had been lining up. I didn't need to attack him. I just needed to make Sarah seem like a high-risk liability. I knew Richard was in the middle of a contentious divorce. I simply sent an anonymous email to his divorce lawyer's office with a link to Tiffany's live stream of the party, specifically the clip where Sarah talks about her plans to upgrade. I added a simple message. Thought you might find this relevant to the discussion of your client's new associations. By the time Sarah woke up on what she probably thought was just another lazy Saturday, her entire world was rigged to blow. Her credit cards were useless. Her apartment was a ticking time bomb. Her best friend was about to be investigated for fraud, and her escape route was about to be cut off. The first text from her arrived at 11:32 a.m. Hey, where are you? And more importantly, why was my card declined at the coffee shop? I was already miles away, drinking my own coffee, watching my assets deploy. I didn't reply. You don't talk to a crisis, you manage it. Update 2. The first explosions were everything I had planned for, and more. The news story about Tiffany's fake puppy charity broke 2 days later. It was brutal. The reporter I'd tipped off did a fantastic job laying out the entire scam in excruciating detail. Tiffany's name and face were everywhere. The IRS launched an immediate investigation. Her father, a man who valued his family's reputation above all else, completely disowned her. Tiffany's influencer career was not just over, it was a smoking crater. Her reaction was to immediately turn on Sarah. Their text messages, which I was still able to access for a short time, were a masterclass in betrayal. Tiffany blamed Sarah for everything, for bringing me into their lives, for being the one whose boyfriend's credit card was used in the fraud. She threatened to expose Sarah's own involvement to the authorities to save herself. The network of fake friendship had collapsed into a cage match. While this was happening, Sarah was in her own personal hell. The landlord had served her with the papers. She had to either qualify for the $5,000 a month lease on her own, an impossibility, or be out in less than a month. Her frantic calls to me went unanswered. The other friends in her circle were also in disarray. Madison, the investment banker, was called into an emergency meeting with HR. She wasn't fired, but she was put on a strict professional probation and stripped of any client-facing duties. The others, seeing the carnage, scattered like cockroaches when the lights come on. They wanted nothing to do with Sarah or the drama that now surrounded her. The final nail in the coffin was Richard. His divorce lawyer, armed with the video of Sarah's upgrade comment, almost certainly used it to paint a picture of Richard as a reckless man already associating with opportunistic women. I can only imagine the conversation Richard had after that. He didn't just ghost Sarah. He blocked her on every platform and reportedly told a mutual acquaintance that she was the kind of train wreck that could derail a city. In the span of a single week, Sarah had gone from being the queen of her social circle to a complete outcast. She had no money, no apartment, no friends, and no escape plan. She was completely, utterly alone, stranded in the middle of a disaster zone I had engineered with the cold, detached precision of a military operation. She had created a crisis with a single careless sentence. I had simply managed it to its logical conclusion. Final update. It has been a month since my birthday party. For weeks, I had complete radio silence. I continued my life, enjoying the peace and quiet of my new secure apartment. I went to the gym. I caught up on work. I read the book my mother had given me. It was a system restore for my own soul. Then last week, she showed up. She wasn't at my new apartment. She was at my office. She had waited in the lobby for hours until I came down at the end of the day. She looked broken. The arrogance was gone. The designer clothes looked worn. She was a refugee from a country of her own making. She launched into the predictable speech. She was sorry. She had made a terrible mistake. She had been insecure and her friends were a bad influence. She loved me. She wanted another chance. I let her finish. I didn't interrupt. When she was finally out of words, I just looked at her. You don't get it, do you? I said, my voice quiet but firm. You think this was about my feelings. You think I did all of this because I was mad. She just stared at me, her eyes full of tears. This wasn't about anger, Sarah, I continued. This was about risk assessment. My job is to walk into chaotic, unstable situations and stabilize them. I identify the primary source of the instability, and I neutralize it. For the last year, my personal life has been my most unstable region, and you were the primary source of the chaos. I pulled out my phone and showed her a picture. It was a satellite image of a disaster zone I had worked in a few years ago, a town completely devastated by a mudslide. "This is what I do," I said. "I don't get emotional about the mudslide. I just build a new, safer place for people to live, away from the danger." I put my phone away. "Your comment at the party wasn't an insult. It was a threat assessment." It was the moment I realized the situation was no longer sustainable. You, Tiffany, your entire network, you were the mudslide, a slow-moving disaster destroying everything in your path. "So I didn't just get mad and leave," I said, looking her straight in the eye. "I did my job. I managed the crisis. I evacuated the critical asset, me. I cut off the resources that were feeding the instability, my money, and I dismantled the hostile infrastructure that was making the situation worse, your friends and your pathetic upgrade plan. It wasn't a breakup, Sarah. It was a strategic relocation of assets to a more secure footing." The final, horrifying understanding dawned on her face. She hadn't been dumped by her boyfriend. She had been professionally handled by a man who saw her as nothing more than a problem to be solved. "But what am I supposed to do now?" she whispered. "I have nothing." "That's not true," I said, turning to walk away. "You have a valuable learning experience. You learned that some people aren't just a stopover on your way to an upgrade. Some of us are the ones who decide where the road goes. And your road just led you right back to the beginning." I left her standing on the sidewalk in front of my office building. I heard later that she had to move back in with her parents. She's working in a coffee shop. Tiffany is facing a mountain of legal problems. The rest of her friends have scattered. The entire toxic ecosystem has been wiped clean. My revenge wasn't a crime of passion. It was a work of cold, hard, professional logic. She thought she was playing a social game. She didn't realize I was playing a game of survival. And in my game, I always control the board.